Everything is Fine by Great 78. Chapter 5. Theories. Hermione chewed her lip nervously, voicing a concern that Draco had had about himself already in his short time spent here in the good place. Malfoy, I don't belong here. I didn't do enough good things in my life to earn a spot in the good place. Draco stared at her across the living room for a solid 5 seconds before guffawing most unbecomingly. The Cornish pixies in his brain were slapping their knees and crying in laughter. "Why are you laughing at me?" she began angrily, but Draco raised a hand to pacify her quickly. "Apologies, Granger," he said, gathering himself. "I'm just trying to wrap my brain around the idea that the Golden Girl, the Gryffindor princess, 1/3 of the trio hailed as the saviour of the wizarding world, thinks she doesn't belong in the good place. Please, enlighten me as to how you came to that conclusion." She huffed in annoyance and placed one small hand on her hip to stare him down. "Malfoy, despite what the papers and magazines would have you believe, not everything that happened during the war was so noble and just." "You don't fucking say," he said, with a curled lip. She flashed him a slightly abashed look. "You know what I mean, Malfoy. And yes, I imagine you've had similar thoughts about yourself since being here. But honestly, I've done so many things over the years that I'm not proud of. Erasing my parents' memories, keeping Rita Skeeter in a jar, blackmail and extortion of the same witch. I'm fairly certain my spells killed a couple of Voldemort's followers during the battle. Using a boy's affections to get back at someone else, sneaking around, stealing, burglary, and trespassing more times than I can count, setting a man's robes on fire." Draco smirked. Her eyes grew round in surprise. "How did you know about that? I don't think even Professor Snape ever knew it was me." Oh God. Was he now going to have to confess this now, too? I was watching you. Or rather, I saw you." Hermione took in his flushed expression, and after a moment nodded slowly. Then she shook her head as if gathering her thoughts. "So yes, that's another one. Setting fire to an innocent man." Draco harumphed, with a slight roll of his eyes. "Innocent, my ass. The man did kill Albus Dumbledore, you remember." Hermione only rolled her eyes back at him. "In part to save your soul, if you recall. And besides, he did that in a show of mercy. Professor Dumbledore was already dying. Snape had already tried to save his life." "I know all that, Granger. What I don't know is how that big brain of yours sifted through every scrap of information we have here at our disposal, and then somehow came to the conclusion that you don't deserve to be here. And yet you seem to have no problem at all with someone like me being here." Her brow furrowed as if to consider the conundrum. "You're right. Not to say... that is, I know you are reformed, Malfoy, and that you never truly believed in the things you were forced to do, at least once you grew up a bit. Perhaps begging for mercy and forgiveness erased your bad deeds. And you never asked for the same, Granger?" Draco quietly inquired. She appeared to think about it for a moment. "Yes, I asked for it. I was just never certain that I received it." Draco shot her a commiserating look. "I feel the same about myself." She was quiet for a long moment before she nodded. "Right. So let's go with the hypothesis that they didn't make 2 mistakes and that we both belong here. But there's still the question of my identity. What happened to the real Harlow Garamond? Is she here being called Hermione Granger by mistake? Is she in a different good place? Is she in the bad place in my stead? Is she even dead? He rubbed at his temples in an effort to relax his brain and the nervous pixies therein.
Dobby,
Draco called reluctantly. A chime, and the elf appeared in the room with them.
Tell me about the circumstances of Hermione Granger's death.
Granger gasped, but Draco ignored it. They needed information. He doubted very much that Ariel would provide it. This was the only way to get it. Hermione Granger died on August 15th, 2001, in Diagon Alley, London. How did she die? Granger asked, in a tone that said she was rather fearful of the answer.
Dobby answered, Hermione Granger was struck down by the killing curse, performed by name redacted.
What the fork does that even mean? Draco asked irritably. Name redacted.
Hermione sighed. You cannot say who killed me, her. The elf being shook his head sadly, flapping his ears.
No, miss.
Salazar Sack, they really did nail this whole pitiful elf aesthetic,
Draco mumbled, much to Hermione's annoyance and agreement. She gave him a baleful look before continuing her questions. Fine, then, Dobby. Can you tell me how Draco Malfoy died?
Draco Malfoy died on August 15th, 2001, in Diagon Alley, London.
The all-knowing sentience, disguised as Dobby, answered.
Who killed me?
Draco asked quickly, hoping to startle the elf into answering him properly.
Dobby opened his mouth to speak, but all that came out was, Name redacted.
Son of a bitch,
Draco muttered. Dobby, how did Draco Malfoy die? What killed him? She asked.
Draco Malfoy was struck down by the killing curse.
His silver eyes shot up to meet her copper ones. He phrased his next question carefully.
Dobby, were Hermione Granger and Draco Malfoy killed by the same person?
No, Dobby said sorrowfully. Hermione Granger was killed by name redacted, and 1 minute later Draco Malfoy was killed by name redacted.
It was Hermione's turn. Dobby, she said kindly, were those the only 2 deaths in Diagon Alley that day? The elf shook his head so vigorously that his ears flapped once more.
No, 2 other souls died that day. Name redacted and name redacted.
Are either of those 2 people in the good place?
Draco asked. Granger almost looked impressed with that question.
Yes, one of these souls is in a good place,
Dobby said. As he spoke, Draco noticed that one of his socks changed color. Here's another question for you, Dobby, Hermione said. How did Harlow Garamond die?
Harlow Garamond died whilst performing a live stream. She had 378 followers on Periscope for her bestie's gender reveal party. She was trying to get a wide-angle shot of herself with the pink or blue-colored cloud of smoke set to come out of the miniature cannon, and she walked forward off of a cliff.
Draco shook his head.
Sorry, perhaps it's because it's all Muggle things, but I didn't understand what half of those words mean. Do you know what a live stream and a periscope is? And surely she already knew her beast's gender. Have you any ideas, Granger?
Hermione looked just as confused. No, and I don't know what any of those things mean either. Dobby, when did Harlow Garamond die?
Harlow Garamond died on June 10th, 2015.
The 3 of them stood there in complete silence for 30 seconds or so. Then Dobby asked them,
Is there anything more that Dobby can provide for either of you?
No, Hermione whispered. With the barest of chimes, Dobby was gone. After a moment more of quiet, Draco spoke.
Well, that cleared up exactly nothing.
How could I supposedly be this Harlow Garamond person if she died 14 years after I died? Hermione mused, almost to herself.
Maybe time works differently here," he offered, just as confused as she was.
Apparently. Well, if nothing else, all of that gave us a lot to think about, I suppose.
Hermione walked to the window and looked out onto the dark street, lit by warm gas lamps at intervals. Across the narrow lane, an older couple sat on the front porch of the log cabin, enjoying glasses of wine. Draco watched her reflection as she faced away from him. She bit her lip and appeared to overcome a conflict within her mind before she spoke again.
"Malfoy, may I ask you a question? And please, don't take it the wrong way."
He gave her nervous reflection on the dark window pane a sarcastic smile. "Granger, with an introduction like that, how could I take your query any other way?"
She pursed her lips in the reflection of the glass. "Fine. What I want to know is there any chance that you killed me?"
He stared hard at her, in complete disbelief. "Granger, I realize we fought on different sides of the war, but in case my earlier apologies about the matter weren't sufficient—"
"No, they were," she began, turning back around to face him with an earnest and regretful expression.
"No, they weren't. If you think there was any possibility that I might have been your murderer. Granger, Hermione, I assure you I was never interested in murdering anyone. Not Dumbledore, not Potter, and certainly not you. I know you might find it hard to believe, but I—"
Here Draco stopped himself, mercifully putting himself out of his misery before he dug an even deeper grave than he currently found himself in. He closed his eyes to gather his thoughts and emotions. After a pause, he continued,
"I never truly wanted you dead. Not in the past, not in our present back on Earth, not in the future. You mean a lot—"
Another pause, longer this time, the pixies in his brain fighting a battle over his next words.
"To the Wizarding World, and I hate that you left it so soon after the war ended."
She looked at him, stunned, speechless. "Malfoy, thank you for your kind words. I'm at a loss. My sincerest apologies for thinking to accuse you. I didn't mean—"
His silver eyes flashed furiously at her. "Don't apologize. You were right to suspect me. I was a Death Eater, after all."
She smiled a bit sadly. "Only in name, and not by choice." They stood on opposite sides of the large room, and were both surprised when the gigantic screen turned off behind them. They stood for a moment in the deafening silence, several emotions passing between them. "It's 10 o'clock. I feel a bit tired. I think I'll go to bed," she said. She looked to her right at a short corridor. Draco could make out 2 doors on either side of it. One door was ajar, revealing a neat sky-blue bedroom, complete with a large mahogany 4-poster bed.
"Brilliant. Is that a second bedroom?"
Draco asked, gesturing to the closed door on the left. No, it's a toilet. There's only the one bedroom," she said, looking nervous now.
Draco jerked his thumb at the recliner. "It's all right. I can sleep in the chair here. By chance, do you have any extra pillows and blankets? I mean, I'm sure I can get them from—"
He placed his hand parallel to the ground about 3 feet from the floor.
"You know who, but I'd rather not call him if it's all the same to you."
Granger burst out into a real laugh, the first that Draco had heard from her since probably their 4th year at Hogwarts. Something about that thought made his chest hurt just slightly, maybe a little more than just slightly. "Yes, there's some in the wardrobe in the back bedroom. Come on, I'll find them for you," she said, still smiling. She came round the sofa and moved towards the corridor.
"Sorry for the turn of phrase. I didn't know if saying his name was taboo, sort of like Voldemort. If you say the name, he shows up."
Draco chuckled. "That does seem to be the case, so watch what you say," Hermione said as they reached the bedroom. The soft lights came on automatically. The lights seem to be mind-controlled, if that makes sense. If you want them to come on, they come on, and vice versa."
"May I try?"
Draco asked. Without waiting for an answer, he thought to himself, "Lower lights to dim." Immediately, the lighting changed to something decidedly more intimate and romantic. She laughed again, and the lights turned back up to normal. Reaching into the wardrobe, she withdrew the small stack of blankets and pillows, passing them to him. Their hands brushed briefly as she gave them to him. Their eyes flitted to each other and then hurriedly parted ways uncomfortably. She followed him back into the living room and sat down cross-legged on the sofa, whilst he kitted out the recliner as a makeshift bed. "We can do most anything, just by saying it aloud, or thinking it. It's a lot like magic, only without a wand or an incantation. The toilet is mostly unnecessary. We don't actually have to go, if you catch what I mean." She smiled.
"Excellent. One less thing to bother with,"
Draco said with an amused smile. "I still get ready for bed the Muggle way, though. Old habits die hard and all that. My parents always emphasized the need to brush and floss my teeth every night. Dentists, you know." Draco did not know, having grown up using a tooth-cleansing charm. He had heard of toothbrushes, but did not know what they were.
I don't mean for this to sound lunatic, but may I watch how you brush your teeth?"
"Are you taking the mickey?" she asked warily.
"No, Granger, just curious. I've heard of a toothbrush, but I've never seen one."
She shook her head in surrender and answered, "Sure, why not? Come on, this way." A few minutes later, in the expansive loo, Draco watched in total confusion.
"It's so messy, Granger. Why would you do this to yourself?"
She laughed, splattering bits of white foam from her mouth onto the sink and faucet. She spoke around the mouthful of foam. "Malfoy, if you don't have anything nice to say—"
Sorry, you're right. It's a fabulous endeavor. Entirely worth it," he placated.
Granger rolled her eyes and then rinsed her mouth and toothbrush. "Right, well, I'm off to bed."
"Just one more thing. Is this the only outfit I own? Can I change clothes?"
Draco asked hurriedly, hoping to delay her departure. He found that he was already dreading being alone, after only a few hours in the company of Granger and Ariel. "Oh, I'm so silly, of course. It's easy enough to change clothes. You don't even need you-know-who." Granger smiled. "All you have to say is, change clothes to pajamas and—"
And suddenly, Granger stood before him wearing only a snug, low-cut, lilac-coloured silk nightgown that barely skimmed the tops of her thighs. Draco's eyes bugged out of his head at the sight of her. The brain pixies were all crowding each other for a better view. With difficulty he wrenched his head sideways to give her a moment of privacy.
"Change clothes to bathrobe and pajamas," she said hurriedly, and suddenly a long, fluffy white robe appeared over the gown. She cinched it nervously around her waist. "Sorry about that, Malfoy."
"Absolutely no apologies necessary, Granger,"
Draco murmured, then immediately cringed and regretted the words.
Salazar on a spit, she was going to draw and quarter him if he looked at her like that again.
"Good night," she said quickly, leaving the loo for the sanctuary of her solitary bedroom. Draco huffed out a deep sigh and scrubbed at his face with his palms. Of course, it was just his rotten luck to be housemates with a woman as beautiful and perfect as Hermione Granger. It was made even worse, considering their past relationship with each other. And the cherry on top of this shit banana split was that Draco Malfoy may or may not have secretly harbored the tiniest of crushes on her for years. The brain pixies all pointed to a light-up sign, like the ones he'd seen plastered all over Piccadilly Circus in Muggle London. The sign flashed out only one word: denial. Draco mentally throat-punched each of the pixies for their insolence. Back in the living room, he dimmed the lights to a soft glow and sat down on the recliner, then spoke into the darkness.
"Change clothes to pajamas."
In an instant, He was wearing what he'd worn to bed every night for at least the past 10 years or so. Dark grey, silken boxer briefs. His eyes drifted to the front door. Did it lock? Was it locked now? He wondered. Were there burglars in the good place? Of course not, he admonished himself lightly. Still, without the luxury of magic, he felt vulnerable in a way that he had not felt in a few years, back when his house had been taken over by the likes of Voldemort, Nagini, and his Aunt Bellatrix. Best to check it, he thought. Standing back up, he crossed the room. There was a small deadbolt shaped like a bar of chocolate. He flipped the bolt and started back towards the recliner. Granger appeared at the end of the short corridor, talking as she walked back into the living room. "Malfoy, I forgot to remind you—" She stopped abruptly, looking at him with her mouth fallen slightly open, unable to look away. Draco gave her a slow smirk, knowing exactly what he was working with. He, for one, would not be conjuring a bathrobe. After an uncomfortable few seconds, Granger cleared her throat and continued. I was just going to say, I forgot to remind you."
"Yes, a reminder. About what?"
Draco drawled, noticing that her eyes had not moved from his toned upper body. He stretched his arms overhead and gave an exaggerated yawn, just to add to the picture that he hoped she was recording in her mind. She huffed and looked down, her cheeks obviously pink even in the dim light. "Sorry, I can't remember." She turned quickly towards the back bedroom, then turned back around to him, eyes still trained on the ground. "Right, I just recalled. The telly comes on at 6 o'clock, so it will probably wake you up." Without another word, she hurried back to her room.
"Thanks for the warning, Granger,"
he called to her retreating back. She went into the bedroom without a reply, and Draco smiled gleefully to himself as he settled into the recliner. The day might not have begun on a particularly happy note, but it certainly had ended up that way. Thank you for listening to Everything is Fine by Great78. If you enjoyed this story and would like to read more like it, please find me on Archive of Our Own or follow my Spotify channel, Silver and Copper.